On behalf of Hope College and our Big Read partners, welcome to this Big Read kickoff event. My name is Deb Van Dynen. I'm an assistant professor in the education department here at Hope College, and I'm so glad you're here. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight at the start of our Big Read Holland Area, our third Big Read Holland Area. Whether you've been participating since the first year when we read To Kill a Mockingbird, or if this is your first ever Big Read event, we welcome you. We're glad you're here, and we're excited for you to read, learn, and discuss Edwige Danticat's Brother, I'm Dying. It's easy for us to think about reading as an individual act, as something we do by ourselves, as something that is solitary and apart from others. What we're doing with the Big Read, however, reframes this view of reading. In these next few weeks, we'll all come together around the shared experience of reading a book. High schoolers and senior citizens, people with different jobs, educational experiences, and political leanings will come together and read. Reading will bring us together as readers and as a community. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because we are a community who delights in and appreciates literature. We're doing this because we're a community who isn't afraid to tackle tough issues. We're doing the Big Read for the third time because as a community, we want to listen and learn from each other and work together to make our community stronger. To participate fully in our program, I encourage you to attend multiple events and book discussions. I've used the analogy before of thinking about our Big Read program as having season symphony or theater tickets. You get the most out of an experience if you participate fully. So, we've designed each of our 14 main events to get at Brother, I'm Dying and its topics from different angles and perspectives. We've planned for 14 public book discussions so that you have the opportunity to talk about what you've read in a smaller group setting. I'm not going to highlight any event in particular. You have the programs in front of you, and I'll be honest, I just think they're all fantastic. So even though I don't expect anyone to attend all of them, please know that there are so many lovely and fantastic events that we have coming up in these next 3 weeks. As a quick note, we have our first ever food event on Thursday. It's the first time we've tried to do something like this, and registration for that event closes tomorrow morning. So if you're thinking about attending that event, please register tonight or tomorrow morning. Well, tonight, my friends, we are in for a treat. We get to hear 3 TED Talk-styled presentations from 3 pretty amazing Hope professors. There'll be a question and answer following the 3 talks, and we invite you to ask your questions about the book and the topics raised in these TED Talks. Before we proceed, though, I want to say a special thank you to our event sponsor for tonight, Colliers International. We're so thrilled to have you partner with us, and we're glad to have you part of our Big Read family. Also, thanks to Herrick District Library, the Ottawa Area ISD, Howard Miller Library, Western Seminary, the Holland Museum, and CultureWorks for being our Big Read partners. And finally, thank you to the most amazing Big Read committee that we have. People I'd want to hang out even if we weren't on a committee together. Their names will be listed on our website, but without them, this program would not happen. So thank you specifically to them. Now, though, I'd like to welcome our mayor of the City of Holland to come up. And I'm delighted to have her tonight and to have her make an official proclamation of the start of our Big Read month. So thank you.
This is exciting. It's a wonderful, wonderful way to bring everybody together. And as a former high school English teacher, I believe in reading and the power of story. And the reason I went into English teaching was because I cared about kids and their lives, and I wanted to help them figure out what they were here for and where they were going and how important they were to the world in general and to each other. And so it's a wonderful thing when we can bring people together around literature and discuss the story in people's lives. But officially, I have a proclamation. This proclamation, whereas a program of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Big Read, broadens our understanding of our world, our communities, and ourselves through the joy of sharing a good book. And whereas managed by Arts Midwest, this initiative offers grants to support innovative community reading programs designed around a single book. And the Big Read supports organizations across the country in developing community-wide reading programs which encourage reading and participation by diverse audiences. And each community event lasts approximately 1 month and includes a kickoff event to launch the program locally, major events devoted specifically to the book, as in panel discussions and author reading, events using the book as a point of departure, as in film screenings and theatrical readings, and book discussions in diverse locations and aimed at a wide range of audiences. The NEA has funded more than 1,100 Big Read programs, providing more than $16 million in grants. Organizations have leveraged more than $35 million in local funding to support their Big Read programs. And the NEA inaugurated the Big Read as a pilot project in 2006 with 10 communities featuring 4 books. The Big Read continues to expand to include more communities and additional books. To date, more than 1,100 grants have been awarded to communities in the U.S. to host Big Reads since the program's 2007 national launch. Now, therefore, I, Nancy DeBoer, Mayor of the City of Holland, Michigan, do hereby proclaim November 2016 to be the Month of Literacy. I urge all in our community to take time to read the selected book, Brother, I'm Dying, by Edwidge Danticat, a deeply moving story of home, family, and immigration set in America and Haiti, and to attend book discussions, author readings, and live performances around the city at Hope College and Herrick District Library. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to recreate the joy of learning about a book and a story and a people from a different time and place, and help us build bridges and understanding between each other and between us and other people groups. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much, Mayor DeBoer. Well, my name is Lauren Swears. I'm a student at Hope College, and I am pleased to introduce our first TED Talk speaker today, Dr. Jonathan Hagood. Dr. Jonathan Hagood is an associate professor of history at Hope College. He teaches survey courses in the history of science, Michigan history, and Latin American history, including the history of gender and power in Latin America, and the history of national and ethnic identities in Latin America. Dr. Hagood's areas of research expertise include mid-20th century Argentina, public health in Latin America, and international nursing in the early 20th century. His TED Talk lecture today is entitled, How Do We Know? Danticat and the Art of Historical Thinking. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Hagood.
Be here. Can you hear me okay? Good. When Dr. Van Dynen asked me to kick things off, I knew that I was taking on a big responsibility. I have to teach you how to say her name. So we're going to do that together as a warm-up. It's Edwidge. Edwidge. Let's do it together. Edwidge. Yeah. Danticat. Danticat. Okay, now we're going to put it together. Edwidge Danticat. Awesome. You guys are great students. A little background on Haiti. It shares the Caribbean island of Hispaniola with the Dominican Republic. It takes up about a third of the island. It's close to Cuba, and therefore it's close to Florida. In 2015, its population was 10.6 million people. For reference, Michigan has roughly 9.9 million people. But Michigan is 9 times as large as Haiti, so Haiti is a lot denser. 95% of Haitians are of African descent, and 5% are mulatto, mixed heritage, or white. Its 2 official languages are French and Haitian Kréyol. Kréyol is based largely on 18th century French with influences from Portuguese, Spanish, Taino, and West African languages. The Taino is the indigenous language. Nearly a decade ago, historians Thomas Andrews and Flannery Burke, inspired by Sam Weinberg's book, Historical Thinking and Other Unnatural Acts, proposed the 5 C's of historical thinking. Taken together, the concepts describe the shared foundations of the discipline of history and what I, as a professor of history, hope my students understand as the components of historical thinking. First, historical thinking involves seeing change and continuity over time. This means growth, decay, and identifying trends. This is perhaps the easiest to grasp of the 5 C's, but we must also consider the rate of change, as well as the extent to which change is felt and welcomed, both by historical figures themselves and by present-day historians. Second, historical thinking requires interpreting the past in context, that is, from the perspective of the world in which historical events took place. Doing so avoids presentism, or the otherwise natural tendency to see the past from our present point of view. Contextualizing is about creating a web of connections in the past, the things you need to know in order to fully understand the story. Third, historical thinking also emphasizes causality. This means trying to understand why an event happened the way it did, and it means searching for multiple causes, even when one appears dominant. Sometimes multiple causes lead to one effect, and one cause can have multiple effects too. Fourth, historical thinking means looking out for contingency. Asking what might have happened involves imagination in relation to potential causes and effects. To argue that history is contingent is to claim that every historical outcome depends upon a number of prior conditions, that each of these prior conditions depends in turn upon other prior conditions, and so on. Thinking about contingency prevents history from being a narrative of inevitable outcomes. Finally, historical thinking requires an appreciation of the complexity of the past. History is messy, complicated, not easily summarized. It's not so complex as to be unexplainable, but it also exists according to its own terms. Assessing this complexity involves rigorous analysis, but it also protects against nostalgia, the wistful desire for a simpler past, a past that frankly never was. Given this framework, I want to briefly provide you with some historical context for Danticat's Brother, I'm Dying, and I will do so hopefully by thinking historically. I simply don't have the time for details, and so please forgive the brevity of this presentation. I'm going to go over the Haitian Revolution, the occupation of Haiti by the United States, and Haitian immigration to the U.S. The Haitian Revolution was a successful anti-slavery and anti-colonial war of independence that took place in the former French colony of Saint-Domingue, taking place from 1791 to 1804. Slavery had existed on the island of Hispaniola since the 16th century, when Old World diseases almost completely wiped out the indigenous population. The importation of African slaves met the need for plantation laborers, and African slaves were the basis of the sugar plantation system that developed under French control from the late 17th through the 18th centuries. Under the military leadership of Toussaint Louverture, forces made up mostly of former slaves destroyed the institution of slavery, fought to preserve their freedom, and founded what became the sovereign state of Haiti. The Haitian Revolution was certainly a major change. It disrupted the narrative of African slave-based agricultural production in the Americas. While the extremes of slavery provided the principal context for the revolution, the French Revolution also was an important component. In the context of the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which claimed freedom and equality for all men, Haiti and its subsequent revolution tested the ideals of the French Revolution. As a consequence of these contexts, we could easily point to the poor conditions of Haitian slaves and the circulating ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity as causes of the Haitian Revolution. More important, perhaps, is that the commitment of the newly formed United States to the institution of slavery meant that the Haitian Revolution caused the U.S. to marginalize Haiti. Although Haiti actively assisted the independence movements in many Latin American countries, this nation of former slaves was excluded from the first regional meeting of independent nations. And furthermore, because of entrenched opposition from southern slave states, Haiti did not receive U.S. diplomatic recognition until 1862, after the South had seceded from the Union. When we think of contingencies, we obviously wonder if and when the Haitian Revolution would have taken place if Spain had maintained control of the entire island, or if the French Revolution had taken place at a different time. The Haitian Revolution is also much more complex than I have now time to discuss. In terms of the French Revolution alone, people in Haiti switch sides all the time. There are many twists and turns to that story. In 1915, the United States responded to the assassination of a pro-American leader of Haiti and the emergence of a new anti-American Haitian leader by sending 330 Marines to occupy Port-au-Prince, the capital city. The occupation of Haiti lasted until 1934. Under the supervision of the Marines, Haiti engaged in an extensive road-building program to enhance the effectiveness of the military and to open the country to foreign investment. Lacking any source of adequate funds, the occupying government revived an old law that required peasants to perform labor on local roads instead of paying a tax. Although the U.S. occupation was a change within Haitian history, the involvement of the U.S. in domestic affairs within Haiti and other Caribbean nations was a continuous feature of the 20th century. The context included both the Monroe Doctrine, through which the U.S. claimed autonomy for the Western Hemisphere while practicing meddling in the affairs of its Latin American neighbors, and economic expansion, through which corporations based in the U.S. increasingly use the resources of Latin American nations to create profits. While the Cold War took place many years after this occupation, it added a particular political and ideological context to U.S. intervention in Latin America after the Cuban Revolution. The crisis that precipitated the U.S. occupation in 1915 took place in the context of fears of German involvement in Haiti. The U.S. had sought to counter German investment by supporting American ownership of Haiti's sole commercial bank, which also served as the Haitian government's treasury. Therefore, from the U.S. perspective, threats to national interests, political and economic, caused its intervention into Haiti. A military occupation, therefore, was necessary. From the Haitian perspective, the occupation caused both long-standing resentment against the U.S. and increasing dependence upon it as a solution to domestic problems. The occupation of Haiti from 1915 to 1934 was contingent on specific events and trends: German economic imperialism and assassination, growing anti-American sentiment, and looming financial failure. The complexity of the occupation and its effects reflects these contingent factors. Prior to the late 20th century, Haiti's largest immigration flows were to France, French-speaking African countries, and Canada. Until the late 1950s, only about 500 Haitians permanently immigrated to the U.S. each year. Immigration began to increase in 1957 when Francois, or Papa Doc, Duvalier, whose regime was highlighted by brutal human rights violations carried out by the Tonton Macoute and oppression of political enemies, came to power. The 1965 Immigration Act permitted family members to bring close relatives, and nearly 7,000 Haitians became permanent immigrants every year over the next 2 decades. The chart on the screen shows the growth of the Haitian immigrant population in the U.S. from 1980 to 2012. You'll note that just in 3 decades, the number increased more than 500% at a yearly growth rate of 6%. This next chart lists the concentrations of Haitian Americans by metropolitan area, and you'll note that Miami and New York are by far the largest Haitian populations. In recent years, the treatment of Haitian immigrants represents a continuing bias in U.S. policy. The Coast Guard has intercepted boats before they left Haitian waters. A disproportionate number of undocumented Haitians who made it to U.S. shores have been incarcerated, and requests for political asylum have been met with the highest rejection rate of any national group. Haitians are most likely to be held at the Chrome Detention Center, which first welcomed Cubans in 1980. Since the early 1990s, advocacy groups have consistently criticized Chrome for mistreatment of detainees, including human rights violations, health problems, overcrowding, and sexual abuse. Clearly, the pattern of Haitian immigration to the U.S. has changed over time. In reference to Brother I'm Dying, Danticat's parents and Danticat herself immigrated to the U.S. in a different context than her uncle did many years later. Both contexts, however, included the completely different experience of Cubans. The wet foot, dry foot policy refers to the fact that anyone who flees Cuba and enters the United States will be allowed to pursue residency. Haitians do not enjoy this benefit. The experience of the Haitian immigrant is therefore contingent on many factors, including international and domestic politics. It certainly isn't a simple story. Rather, the complex reality of Haitian immigration is directly opposed to the nostalgic history of white European immigrants who came to the U.S. in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, within different contexts, but for similar reasons. Well, I hope I've given you some helpful historical context for Brother I'm Dying. I'd like to close with some prompts for thinking historically while reading the book. Although I'm certainly predisposed to this view, I believe that Danticat's memoir deftly explores and engages the art of historical thinking. To that end, I encourage you to look for the ways in which she identifies how Haiti has and has not changed over time. The same is true for changes and continuity over time for her family and its individual members. Also, pay attention to how Danticat explores the different contexts in which she places her memoir. It's not as simple as contrasting Haiti with the U.S. Rather, Danticat shows us these contexts at different times and from the perspectives of different people. I'm not going to spoil the plot, but I will say that questions about why things happen, why people make the choices that they make, and why people react the way they do are foundational to this book. In the same way, lurking in the background of the memoir are questions of contingency. We wonder, along with Danticat herself, whether things could have turned out differently, whether things were meant to be, or whether events reflect the choices that people make or that others make for them. Finally, Brother I'm Dying is a complex story. This isn't a neat memoir of immigrating to America and overcoming the problems of assimilation. Danticat doesn't give us a smooth arc of conflict and resolution. Instead, by challenging herself to make sense of what happened to her family, she thinks historically about her life and the lives of her father and her uncle. I hope that reading this book will prompt you to engage in some historical thinking too. Thank you. Merci.
Our next speaker, Dr. Pauline Remy, is an assistant professor of French here at Hope College. She graduated from the University of Iowa last year with a doctoral degree in French and Francophone World Studies. Originally from a small Caribbean island called Dominica, not to be confused with the Dominican Republic, her current research interest is Kréyol studies, with concentration on métissage, or cultural hybridity, marriage, concubinage, family life, and the moula trace in colonial and post-colonial Haiti, Martinique, Senegal, and New Orleans. Her lecture tonight is Kréyol, Folk Tales and Family Life in Brother I'm Dying. So let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Remy.
Good evening, all. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to share with you the cultural aspect of Danticat's Brother I'm Dying. And this evening, as the student rightly said, my topic is Kréyol folklore. I'm actually going to do Kréyol and folklore because of time constraints and Brother I'm Dying. So how does Danticat pay tribute to Haiti's cultural richness in her novel? Her novel is suffused with fragments of dreams, memory, history, local norms, laws, and of course the Creole language. Through these sketches, we get a glimpse into Danticat's Haiti, the country of her birth, and to which she holds solid connections. Her novel might be written in English, as are all her other novels, but the content clearly speaks of her Haitianness, her Creole identity. Many Haitians live abroad, some of the most brightest and the most talented. As of 2010, about 1 million live in various parts of the United States, New York, Florida, just to name a few. These Haitian communities, of which Danticat is a part, help foster Haitian identity and culture without necessarily rejecting the new culture of a host country. Danticat embodies cultural hybridity that many Haitians today have come to embrace. Her love for Haiti and its people is palpable in the novel. She left Haiti at the age of 12, a crucial age when young people question identity and negotiate ways to adapt to their new surroundings. As a little girl, she felt that she did not belong to her new home. As an adult, she made a home in Little Haiti, a Haitian community in Miami. She never severed ties with her home country, going back 25 times within a decade. This novel thus pays homage not only to Danticat's family, but also to a beloved country. It's no surprise that as she stands at the consulate at age 12, she's conflicted. We get a sense of her guilt and betrayal as she leaves behind her family and her country. She cannot help but contemplate the American flag at the consulate, a symbol of the American dream which lays ahead, but a symbol also of a bitter past. Like her parents before her who have embraced the American flag, Danticat in turn bows to that flag because she thought it was the right thing to do. But she's very conscious of the fact that her grandfather had also fought dearly against that very flag. But how is culture, or Haiti's culture, conveyed in her novel? So Haiti's culture is vibrant, it's colorful, but most importantly, it is infinite. It has transcended slavery, colonization, invasions, dictatorships, disasters, both man-made and natural, and triumphs today across a variety of mediums: art, music, food, religion, and language. As the Haitian-born artist Ulrich Jean-Pierre notes, Haiti's culture has magical beauty, as well as an open door of generous inspiration to life and all sensitive souls. Indeed, Haitian culture is a gateway to understanding a people and a nation that have been misunderstood and maligned for too long. Two areas in Danticat's novel convey the richness of Haitian culture: the use of Creole words and expression throughout her novel, and references to folklore. Haiti is often referred to as the birth mother of the Caribbean, Mama Haiti, or Mother Haiti. She is likened to the courageous self-sacrificing mother, the Creole mother of the Caribbean, who is at once discreet or flamboyant, depending on her moods. By suffusing her novel with Creole words and expression, Danticat honors her Haitian identity. Creole is the national language of Haiti, and Danticat intentionally inserts it into her writing, not to confuse non-Creole speakers, since she explains immediately what these mean, but to give a glimpse into the life of everyday masses. She could have used French, for it is the official language of the country. However, it's the language of the elite, and French remains inaccessible to the wider populace. Danticat's novel speaks to people like her uncle Joseph and her tante Denise, who represent the Haitian people, their struggles, their pride, but mostly their unique sense of solidarity and unity. Very few words are used in her novel, and each time, very few French words, that is, are used in her novel. But each time that they're used by the elite. I have two examples here. Page 98, the doctor who examines Danticat and her brother before giving them the okay that they were disease-free. She says, parce qu'il faudra bientôt apprendre l'anglais, because you will soon have to learn English. And another time, ta maman, ton papa te manque. Do you miss your mom and dad? And this is the agent at the French consulate. These examples show that French is still very much a part of Haitian identity. So what is Kréyol? And how did it become Haiti's national language? Haitian Creole is a true national language of the Republic of Haiti. In addition to 7 million people in the homeland, it is spoken by about 1 million Haitians living abroad. All Haitians speak the language, but a small minority of about 10% of the population also speak French. However, even Haitians who master French consider Haitian Creole, which they use for most everyday communication, as a symbol of their national identity. Kréyol is the term used by the people for Kréyol. The term Kréyol comes from a Portuguese word meaning raised in the home. It first referred to Europeans born and raised in overseas colonies. It was later used for languages that arose on the plantations. It is most widely spoken and most developed of a large group of Creole languages that are found today in former French colonies, including Louisiana, Guadeloupe, Martinique, French Guiana, Dominica, St. Lucia, and islands in the Indian Ocean. Creole resulted from African slaves' efforts to speak the French that they heard when they arrived on the colonies. Slaves came from all over West Africa and spoke many different languages. Also at that time, most of the French people in Saint-Domingue, today's Haiti, spoke French dialects and everyday spoken French called popular or common people's French. Over time, the approximative form of French became more and more different from French varieties and came to be recognized as a language in its own right, Creole. It is also interesting to note that it was picked up by the whites as well and became the lingua franca used by all those born in the colony. More than 90% of French vocabulary is of French origin, yet many French people can't understand Creole. This is because the grammars of the two languages are very, very different. However, maintaining Haitian Creole is not very easy. To avoid being discriminated against, many prefer to speak English rather than Creole, so that others will not identify them as Haitians. Even in Haiti, there can be a stigma attached to speaking only Creole. Now let's look at a few examples. There are many examples in the book, but we're only going to look at 3 examples. Page 60, Maman, excuse-moi. Maman, excusez-moi. Mom, I'm sorry. Lit mourit. Il est mort. He's dead. Fais vite. Dépêche-toi. Ou fais-le vite. And which means hurry up. So we can see the difference and the similarities between the French and the English. And the pronunciation might be a little different, and I can't really pronounce them very well, because the Haitian Creole and Dominican Creole, from where I'm from, it's slightly different. So the other part of my talk is the folklore. In the Caribbean, the dominant family structure has historically been matrifocal, even though the society is largely patriarchal. Women are the central pillars, or the Creole term femme potomiton, or maman Kréyol, mother Creole, or the Creole mother. And in Haitian society, but also in the wider post-slavery societies, they take care of the children and the home in the absence of fathers, or the effacement of fathers. One of the roles of the Creole mother is for the upkeep and transfer of culture. And what better way to do so than through oral storytelling of folklore, of folktales? Storytelling, traditionally the province of women in Haiti, has been a form of discourse well integrated into their lives. It's considered a safe and domestic craft to entertain children and entangle them in webs of stories. It kept them away from trouble. Women held the key to the magic of these tales. A primary reason for the preservation of the oral tradition, which unfortunately is dying out, is the simple fact that almost half of the Caribbean population cannot read or write. Folklore, which is the creative expression of the traditional beliefs and customs of the people. They are the window into the souls of people. And most importantly, they are and still are, they were and still are the means for the transfer of culture. In Haitian folklore, we find that the Haitian people are fond of proverbs and stories that teach a lesson. The Haitian storyteller calls the subject by shouting, "Kréyol," if there are those who wish to listen to a tale when they would respond by shouting, "Crack." Danticat mentioned only two such tales, but those tales have very powerful lessons. The tale of the singing mother and the tale of the death, of the angel of death. In the first tale, the singing mother is a tale really similar to that of Rapunzel. But the evil person is a serpent. In the first tale, the resilience of the Kréyol mother and the imagery of the snake are not to be neglected. Fear of not being able to discern or know the mother's voice, and consequently being deceived and led away into the night. These stories are carved into children's dreams so that when they listen to them, they will remember the sound of the mother's voice, and ultimately, their own voice. This tale cautions against self-alienation, an alienation of the Haitian culture and its identity. The symbol of the snake is prevalent in Haitian culture. It is greatly feared, for it is seen as an antagonistic figure, the incarnation of evil. The symbol of the snake is also closely linked to the voodoo religion. Dambala, or Danbala, is a serpent god and the oldest of the voodoo pantheon. He's said to have been the one to create the world. Dambala created the water from his shed skin and the stars in the sky from his coils. He's married to Aida Wedo, the rainbow, an eternal love that represents the balance between the male and the female. He represents wisdom and the mind, and is associated with symbols like the color white, eggs, bones, and ivory. The protector of the helpless and the young children, as well as the handicapped and the deformed. He's said to transport the souls of the dead to the afterlife. The voodoo has often been maligned by many as a strange, exotic mixture of spells, possessions, and rituals. But like any other religion, its purpose is to comfort and give hope to people through a common bond. The second tale, the angel of death and Father God, was retold by Tante Denise, Danticat's aunt, originally told by her grandmother, Grand-mère Mélina. This tale between Father God and the devil. It alludes to life's great questions concerning life and death, good and evil, God and the devil. This conversation between these two powerful forces question the fairness of God, especially as it relates to the unending suffering of Haitians. And although Danticat isn't depicted as overtly religious, faith is at the core of the novel. Faith in family, in community, and in God. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Remy. Well, our third and final speaker for the evening is Dr. Natalie Dykstra. She's a professor of English here at Hope College, where she has taught American literature and biography writing since the year 2000. She is the recipient of a National Endowment of the Humanities Fellowship and the author of Clover Adams, A Gilded and Heartbreaking Life, a finalist for the Massachusetts Book Award. Her next book project is also a biography, this time the story of Isabella Stewart Gardner, a 19th century art collector who designed and built her own museum, an Italian palazzo on the Fenway in Boston. So join me in welcoming Dr. Natalie Dykstra.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here tonight on this panel and with all of you as we launch this year's book read. Thank you to our organizers, in particular Deb Van Dynen and Eva Dean Folkert. We are very fortunate as a college and as a community to come together in the fall and talk about a good book we're all reading. As an English professor, what could be better? So I've been asked to be on this panel because as a writer, I tell other people's stories. In short, I'm a biographer. Our writer tonight, Edwidge Danticat, is also a biographer in her book, Brother, I'm Dying. Her title comes from the words spoken not by her, but by her Uncle Joseph, her father's older brother, the man who raised her after her parents emigrated from their native Haiti to Brooklyn, and who, together with her father, is one of the principal subjects of the book. But Danticat is not only a biographer. This is not only a story about the generation ahead of her. Bringing her family's past forward to a vivid present, bearing witness to her country's tapestry of suffering and resistance, Danticat weaves together biographical elements with a stirring memoir composed of her own memories as a young girl growing up first in Haiti, then as an immigrant to America. She is a daughter, a soon-to-be mother, and a writer. I tell my students that reading a text closely is noticing. Noticing words, noticing patterns, noticing tone, noticing characters and themes. So I want to notice with you a few features of the narrative, namely her style, her use of biography, and finally, the heartbeat of the book, the impulse of memory in the form of memoir. So what do we notice about the writing style? Danticat is a plain-spoken writer, remarkably so. If her narrative is dramatic, one of homelessness and homesickness, as noted by the New York Times book reviewer, her language and tone are not. Maybe this is because English is her third language. Maybe she's coolly careful with her words because she knows too well, growing up in a dictatorship, the danger of overheated words. Whatever the reasons, the surface of her prose, her diction, her sentence structures, the moves she makes from scene to scene and chapter to chapter almost never calls attention to itself. Her voice is deliberate, measured, not at all elaborate or flashy. She includes very small moments. One of my favorites is something of a throwaway, just an everyday scene of her as a young girl getting a treat from a street vendor. She writes, quote, "On the sidewalk outside the bank was a man selling grated ice sweetened with syrup, a childhood delight called Fresco. On the man's wobbly patchwork cart was a block of transparent ice, half buried in sawdust and surrounded by a line of colorful bottles. My eyes followed the man's shriveled hands as he carefully tapped his grater against the ice, just as he always did, to tempt us. My uncle motioned for him to come, and the cart's rubber wheels screeched against the sidewalk as he moved toward us," unquote. Simple, yet vivid. The sounds and tastes and intensities of Haiti, its heat and bustle, are captured by her steady eye. I also find myself thinking sometimes that it was as if she was holding something back, holding something in, as if she had a lump in her throat. Her response to an interviewer who asked whether she wrote the book out of guilt, Danticat replies, quote, "I think writing this book was born out of a sense of not so much guilt, but a sense of pain. A big part of the immigrant experience is separation. In most cases, not everyone leaves, and there's always people being left behind, unquote. Maybe another way to think of her stylistic astringency is to imagine her stepping aside from her narrative, keeping her writing voice quiet as possible so that her story can shout. And what a story! Of home and exile, political turmoil and personal sacrifice, silence and speech, familial love and social disintegration. It is a story of two brothers, one who stays in Haiti from a genuine, faith-driven desire to improve his country, and the other who immigrates to the foreign terrain of Brooklyn in search of a more stable and prosperous life. Though different, each choice is an honorable one, requiring sacrifice, determination, a belief in a better future. Danticat begins with the news of her own pregnancy and the concomitant illness of her father. She then moves back in time to recall her growing up apart from her father and mother and with her Uncle Joseph and Aunt Denise. She gives us a full portrait of these people she so much loves, their habits, their gestures, the way they move in the world, so that the reader can see them too. The sound of Uncle Joseph's mechanical voice, the feel of her mother's dress against the writer's cheek, the look of death on her father's face in the book's haunting last chapters. Danticat is in pursuit of these people, hungry for their presence on the page, just as all biographers are in pursuit of their subjects. A favorite writer of mine, the great Richard Holmes, biographer of Shelley and Coleridge, writes that biography, quote, is a pursuit, a following of footsteps. You can never catch your subject, but maybe, if you're very lucky, you might write about the pursuit of that fleeting figure in such a way as to bring him or her alive in the present. Biography, then, is a resurrection of sorts, a bringing back to life. And biography can also be a redress of wrongs, a song of what has been silenced. Danticat says something akin to this when she writes in her book, quote, what I learned from my father and uncle, I learned out of sequence and in fragments. This book is an attempt at cohesiveness and at recreating a few wondrous and terrible months when their lives and mine intersected in startling ways, forcing me to look forward and back at the same time. I am writing this only because they can't, unquote. If the challenge of biography is entering enough into your subject to be able to see life from another pair of eyes, the challenge of memoir is to have enough distance from your own experience to portray yourself clearly enough for the reader to see you. If in one you want to get closer, in the other you need to stand back to see the pattern, the imagery, the meaning of what's happened. I think we can agree. Danticat expertly does both. Memory is what makes our lives. We are lost without it. In another of her books, this one entitled Create Dangerously, Danticat asserts that, quote, forgetting is a constant fear in any writer's life. For the immigrant writer far from home, memory becomes an even deeper abyss. It is as if we have been forced under the notorious forgetting tree that our slave ancestors were told would remove their past from their heads and dull their desire to return home. We know we must pass under the tree, but we hold our breath and cross our fingers and toes and hope that the forgetting will not penetrate too deeply, unquote. While reading Danticat's story of her growing up, of her love of books, and of her attention to writing, I had a memory of my own that kept recurring. Bear with me a moment. On Saturdays as a kid, I'd often go with my dad to our local library in the Chicago suburbs, and while he picked out books for himself and my mom for that week's evening reading, I'd scoot to my favorite place in the library, an area that held the bound copies of Life magazine. I'd pick a year, 1946, 1958, 1963, that was a big year for news, and settle down on the floor between the metal shelving, safely hidden from view, to work my way through that year's issues. The large pages were still crisp as if just published, but they held an aroma, almost unmistakable and surely unforgettable, of the past. If I were to speculate about my younger self, I may have been reading those magazines because I wanted to project myself into more dramatic events of the world, imagine myself living a more eventful life than what Lexington Street in a Chicago suburb offered at the time. But I digress. The aroma of the past, of memory, that's what so permeates the pages of Danticat's book. Memoir is often a cri de coeur, a cry from the heart, an appeal for understanding from the writer to the imagined reader. It's also helpful, as I say to my students, to think of memory as a good joke, in that it's something you catch or get, not something you explain or define. Definitions too often close the heart, and memoir, almost more than any other genre, depends on the open heart of its readers. It's as if Danticat has said to us, here's my story. Put my story next to your story. We, her readers, have become witnesses to the atrocities of political upheaval and exile because she does remember, and in doing so, remembers those who may otherwise be forgotten. Her narrative, urgent yet patient, passionate yet poised, is oddly surprisingly buoyed by the persistence of memory, the power of family, and the durability of love. I so much anticipate our community exploration of these many aspects of Danticat's narrative, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. Thank you. Thank you.
As our three speakers come back on the stage, excuse me, could we all give them another round of applause? I think we'll all agree how they've set the stage for us, literally, on the stage tonight, from a written, cultural, and historical perspective that you'll now dig into this book and see deeper into Edwige Danticat's story. My name is Eva Dean Folkert, and I'm a member of the Big Read Committee. At this time, we are going to have the privilege to ask our panelists, our speakers, questions that might have come to your mind due to their talks about the book. So, I have one mic, and Deb Van Dynen has the other. Please don't be shy. I know often the first question is the hardest, but we have a volunteer already, so I'm going to allow him to start. Sir, could you please give your name and then your question, and who you'd like to address it to?
Anyone on the panel, Jack Bradford. Haiti, in the general sense of things, has been a kind of downtrodden, difficult culture with assistance from the U.S., which probably hasn't helped anything. But somehow, when you think of Dominican Republic and the same island, how different that history is, and how the history of Haiti has also been impacted in every way.
That's true. When I read the book, I thought it was interesting that Danticat didn't mention at all the relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. I know historically that's a big source of tension, and it doesn't seem to figure as part of her story, so I'm just going to assume that that's it. You can't really understand the two without talking about race. Haiti is almost entirely of African descent and has been from its very beginning. And the Dominican Republic is much more of a mestizo mix of African, indigenous, and Spanish heritage. And they see each other as very different from one another, and that's how it's played itself out. And I think it goes back to the colonial period. Once the island was split, they were developed in two very different ways along two very different tracks, and will continue to be that way probably for the foreseeable future.
Other question?
Russell Dykstra, and I get the impression there's a large religious difference between Haiti and Dominican Republic. And I'm wondering if that contrast in religion is part of the stresses between the countries, and what blending can you tell us about? I know our speaker in the center is from the Dominican Republic, I believe.
No, I'm not. I just want to make it clear that I'm from Dominica, not the Dominican Republic. And could you repeat your question, please? Oh, the difference of religion between Haiti and Dominican Republic? That could be one of the reasons why. Well, I would tend to agree with Professor Hagood. It's all about the race. And Danticat doesn't mention it in this book because she has already mentioned it in The Farming of Bones. And when she talked about the racial divide, unfortunately, between these two groups of people who live on the same island. But religion, well, Haiti is, I would say, a large portion of Haitians are Catholics. And just as Haiti has also the voodoo religion, the Dominican Republic also has another type of religion that's close to voodoo. I think it's I'm not very sure because I don't want to make mistakes, but there also is another religion in the Dominican Republic as well. So religion is not the main issue, but I think that a lot of people outside of Haiti vilify Haiti and the voodoo religion. And because of that, it put a stain on Haiti and Haitians as well. So that could definitely be one of the reasons why Dominican Republic, the people do not really get along well with Haitians, and a lot of people outside of Haiti as well because of the religion. But the voodoo, as I said in my I didn't say it as much, but it's really much maligned and misunderstood. And there is black magic, which is just like 5%. And then there's white magic, which is all about herbs and healing and understanding. But Hollywood and the popular media have done so much to skew the image of this religion, so that Haitians unfortunately get every time be attacked and because of what they believe. And voodoo is like any other religion, is it? Just as the Catholics, they have the saints. The gods of the voodoo pantheon are also different spirits that they believe in, spirits of healing, spirits of love, just you name it. So this, as you go back to your question, it definitely could be one of the reasons.
Other questions? This is your opportunity before you all go off and read the book, maybe for a second time.
My name is Lauren, and this is a question for the women, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I liked the questions that you left us with to think about as we read in the first TED Talk. And I just wondered if, from your two perspectives, if you had any questions you would want to leave with us or things to think about as we read from the perspective of your talks.
Yeah, I think it's, I was fascinated by her style because it wasn't what I anticipated when I first got the book, I think. And the contrast between sort of the drama of the stories and then the astringency of the she writes very clearly, but she's really not asking the reader to pay attention to her style as a writer in a way. She kind of disappears, and I found that very interesting. So pay attention to that, her sentences, her word choice. And then also watch when she makes those shifts, those narrative shifts between memoir and biography. She does this very interesting sort of braid back and forth. And then it comes back to the point at the beginning, right? So you're back with her father and with her pregnant, and so you have this sort of full circle structure to the narrative, and I thought that was also very compelling. Sometimes I would get a little lost, so don't fear not. I think it's not a straight line narrative, right? And so there's things that, it's almost more like a garden where things are blooming over here and then there's things blooming over there. So pay attention to that. That's
what I would say is women in the book, their role is very subtle. And she doesn't want to make it, she's talking about her brother, her brother dying, her uncle and her father. But women are not in the Caribbean, and I'm from the Caribbean, and I can attest to that. Women their role may not be visible forward, but they're there in the background. So she does mention her mom, and her mom may have a minor role, but she is, you sense the strength of her mother. So the strength of the Kréyol mother is very present, though not very out there visible, and the solidarity of the family, and that also as well, it goes right back to the mother. So there is really strong family bonds and communal bonds in the textbook, and who holds them together the most are the mothers. And the stories, the folk tales that she mentions, and she mentions her grandmother who lived, I'm not sure how long, because she didn't know her age. She only can guess her age based on an event, a major event that happened. So it's through these little stories that she's able to talk about the Haitian mothers and Haitian women, and as a woman and as a writer, because a lot of Haitian writers are males at the time. Today, they're a little much more popular, but there still remain a very small number to come out and write. So she writes for her family, and the family is represented by women a lot, but always in the background, but that strong force. So this is what I would look for, that subtle role of the woman.
I've got a different kind of question. Do you have any questions of each other? Come on.
She tells these folk tales. Did she tell them, were they familiar to you? Were they, or did she tell them in a way that was consistent with how they're always told? Or were they told in her style?
So the cric-crac is very common in oral cultures. And we call that the folk tales in my island. It's called conte, short stories, and it starts the same way, crick, crack. So right away, I was able to identify with the style of the story, not necessarily the particular tale. I don't know any of these, but they're very similar to the ones that I grew up. And it's always something that the older women would tell, and all the kids would gather around. It's usually very scary, but at the end of it, you learn a lesson, maybe.
Hello. My question is for all three of you, but over 600 students in high school will be reading or have been reading this book, and I was wondering if you had any advice either for their teachers or for the students themselves in the best way to access the text.
Maybe my first thing is to just have them start as a clean slate, tabula rasa, just because take every preconceived ideas and notions that they've had of Haiti and just read the book as if they were they've never heard of Haiti before and they're just discovering and uncovering something. That would be one of my advice.
I would ask your students to, and this is a good assignment for Thanksgiving and Christmas, to talk to the oldest family member in the room and ask them to tell the student some stories about their childhood or past, to get them into the idea that the way that we work as families and as social beings is we tell stories about one another, we tell stories about ourselves, and we don't always know all of the answers. And that would be a different way of getting into what this book is about, which is ultimately trying to tell the story of what happened. I think a lot of students don't realize that their grandparents have interesting things to say, or that their grandparents might remember a time before the internet, which are small things, but just to get them into this mindset that there are stories to be told that are perhaps just as valuable or interesting as the kind that are in this book.
I just have one thing I would suggest, and that is to read it aloud. And because the sound of the words, I think, are really important.
I know that the speaker in the center, you are from Dominica. You probably have experience surviving hurricanes the way the Haitian people just did again. Can you share some of that with us, please?
What part of it do you want me to share? Okay, well, first of all, yeah, hurricane is one of our, something that we're used to. One good thing is our homes are built to withstand hurricanes, so we do not get as much damage as Haiti would have, and then again, Haiti has been through, because of deforestation and all that, it has affected them a lot more. Memorable, well, I used to kind of look forward for hurricanes because it was, I get to stay away from school. And it was always exciting to see the winds blowing and the zinc flying out from the homes, which was very dangerous, but I didn't know that. But it was really fun. Last year, there was Tropical Storm Erica, which really devastated my island. I've been here, so I did not experience it. I think it's one of the worst that we've had. And I think because more and more people are building in places that they should not build, so again, it has to do with planning and housing. And so there was a lot of structural damage, and a whole community had to be relocated, because if they continue living, then it's really, really near the mountains. And so you had a lot of soil erosions, and that swept, I think we had like 45 deaths. So it's not something that, it's not an exciting event. It's something that should, that causes destruction. And some of you, those of you maybe from Florida, I'm sure you've seen what it can do in Florida. So, but just what really sticks is just that all the wind and the rain. And you get to stay inside. And I know that sometimes we had to go to these churches because the homes were not strong enough. And so that was, as a little girl, I remember going to the church and everybody, there'll just be this whole community of people. And you get to sleep on the floor next to your friends. So this was really fun, the fun part. But that was just me being a child. But going older, you know that the dangers of hurricane. But my mother never left the house. She's like, you had to tie, she'd tie herself to the house, literally, well, not literally. Because she didn't want to leave the house. She figured that she could withstand. And that happens a lot. Nobody wants to leave. They were scared of looting and all that. But yeah, unfortunately, this is one of the things that we get and it's a yearly, and it's from June to, right now it's still going to November, so.
I'm really sorry to pose another question directly to Dr. Remy, but my father is from Dominica, and he has a little book on local
I can't see
folklore.
who's talking. I really want to know whose father is from Dominica.
Hello.
Wow.
And I was curious if you've noticed any similarities between folklore from Dominica and folklore from other islands, or even in Danticat's book at all.
There were a bit of similarities. When she spoke, I think was her cousin, was it Marie Micheline, I think, who got pregnant really young and had different kids. And unfortunately, this is one of the things that happen a lot. We have, and as I said earlier, there's this matrifocal family structure. And the fathers are often absent. And again, this goes back to the colonial times and slavery, when the dad was emasculated and castrated literally, and had no claim over his wife or his children. And it somehow still remains in our men, abandon the families and so on. So that was one of, just Marie Micheline, but on the other side, we have Danticat's family, who is a nuclear family par excellence. And they're a really close-knit family. And I saw a lot of little things in there that just struck home, like the use of cod liver oil. It's a cure-all for everything. You have a fever, oh, drink some cod liver oil. You have anything, oh, drink some cod liver oil. And another thing that stood out again was the little care package that you're traveling. So if I go home, before I come back, my aunt or my mom or grandma, whoever, would pack these little things that you won't see in the United States. So you should maybe pack yams and stuff that you can't even take on the plane anyways. So I saw that when Dantica went to visit her parents in New York, and the mom packed the stuff. So all these little things really brought me right back home. And there are a whole bunch of other little things that I'm like, oh wow, this is so like back home. So we need to talk, yeah?
A question for a historian dealing with context and causality. I remember reading somewhere, I believe, that there was a point in history where Haiti was by far the more prosperous side of the island. And then I believe it was due to historical events that occurred in France that caused them to withdraw some of their financial support, and conversely, events in Spain that caused them to invest in the other side of the island. And at the same time, there was over-farming and deforestation of the Haitian side of the island, which changed the basic ecosystem of that side of the island, which has had long-term consequences. Are those accurate statements, and/or is there anything you could add to that in terms of how that influences the culture and how this story turns out?
Sure. Yes, those are accurate. It's Hispaniola is a curious little test case because more or less artificially divided into a third and two-thirds. There is a geographic reason for the line being there. It's mountainous, but all things considered, it's otherwise a similar climate, similar access to trade routes, similar ecosystems, but the colonial encounter was different once the French took possession of it in the mid-17th century. And an important part of that context is that what became the Dominican Republic was actually a relatively minor part of the Spanish Empire. A lot more interesting things were happening from their perspective in Mexico, Peru, and other places. France was all in on what became Haiti and its other small possessions in and around the Caribbean, so that really, if you take the imperial perspective, you have different plans for what is otherwise the same island. So things could have gone differently where Spain had control over the whole place. And there was a brief period in the 19th century when there was technically a kingdom that covered both. But by then, the die had been cast culturally and racially, that these were really two different groups of people.
Have any of you read any of her other books? I'm over here. So my question would be prompted first by, have you read any of her other books? And then secondly, just perusing the description of them, it sounds like even though they are novels, they have some shared themes with this particular book, and wondering what intersections are there. And after this reading is concluded, would it be helpful if we're interested in some of the things that we've learned from this particular book to pick up some of her other books and what we might find there?
I can certainly recommend Breath, Eyes, Memory. It's a similar, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a very similar story, but fictionalized, loosely autobiographical. She wrote that first. I read it second. And that was interesting because it is not a memoir, it's not a biography, but as a reader, having already read Brother, I'm Dying, you see some themes get reinforced, some disappear entirely. It's almost like a different, I mean, I know it's the same author, but it's almost as if two different approaches to dealing with this central story, which is what happened to her, right? And in Breath, Eyes, Memory, she's working it out in a more traditional fictional mode of coming up with a loosely autobiographical story that shares enough with the truth that I can think of her as an author working these things out, but is playful enough in the fictional world that it kind of stands on its own, so to speak. That would be one I would certainly recommend.
I would also recommend Kréyol. It's I haven't read it yet, but I would recommend it because it's also a book of folk tales, several folk tales. And I also read The Farming of Bones. So if you really want to get a little bit of more of the tension between of the original, which started between the Dominican Republic and Haiti, then The Farming of Bones, really, really sad. And that's another thing too with a lot of Haitian female writers. The content speaks about Haiti. So although Danticat lives in the United States, she writes in English, but her muse is always Haiti and the Haitian problems and struggles. And as well in Breath, Eyes, and Memories, also women problems a lot. She deals with that. So The Farming of Bones and, as I said, Breath, Eyes, Memory, and Kréyol, also very good ones.
And I enjoyed reading her a collection of essays called Create Dangerously. The first essay, it's the name of the collection, but it's also the first essay, and she gave that at Princeton. And it specifically talks about her identity as, self-identity as an immigrant writer and what that means. And yeah, it was a wonderful compliment to Brother, I'm Dying. So I very much recommend that as well.
Time for one more question. One more question.
Hi, I've got a question about the issue of Restavek, child slavery in Haiti, and it seems to be such a large problem in Haiti, and I was just curious, she's such an observant and passionate person that the issue never really even comes up, and she herself could have been put into that situation so easily with her parents leaving the country, but I mean, it was so fortunate that her uncle was there. I mean, number one, are you familiar with the issue, and you know, any thoughts on why it wasn't part of the story?
I am not familiar with the issue, but it's a good question, and I would speculate that it is easy for us as mostly middle class, upper middle class Americans to think of Haitian immigrants because many of them end up being in lower socioeconomic status, and they get here. To forget that Danticat came from a relatively prosperous middle-class family, and I am making some assumptions here, but that probably protected her from those kinds of dangers in a way that wouldn't have been true if she were from a lower-class, poorer family in Haiti. But I'm speculating.
I don't know very much about it, but I know it happens because there are a lot of kids are left alone. And as he said, rightly said, that Danticat came from a very loving family who look out for each other. And even if her parents were away, she had an uncle and an aunt, and they protected her. But I think like other writers have spoken. I think one of her books, was it in Breath, Eyes, and Memory? One of her books where she spoke of rape of a young girl. Yeah, I think it's Breath, Eyes, and Memory, and by the Tonton Macoute. So it's very possible, and she did not mention it in this book because that was not her focus. Her focus is to tell a family story about dying and death and birth. So that's maybe one of the reasons why she did not mention it, but she did mention it in Breath, Eyes, and Memory. This comes up.
We thank you all for coming tonight. It's been a terrific start to our kickoff. Our kickoff has been terrific to start off the Big Read, and we thank you for bringing your expertise. Can we give them a round of applause again? This is a fantastic book about dying and living and love and family and immigration and adversity. And we hope you read it now for the next 3 weeks, part of the Big Read, with deep curiosity and gladness. We hope you come back to more events. You can find those events again on our website. If you picked up a bookmark, those events are there too. Thank you for being with us tonight, and we wish you well.